We are live, Cliff.
We are live. Right after.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
Well, it's
Chicago
not. It's
land.
not. Yeah.
We weren't even in Chicago.
No.
I felt like we were there though.
We're the first chase or first race into the chase for 2016.
Already some interesting storylines as we speak.
For sure. I mean, that's the crazy thing about doing this show so soon after is there's so much that's going to develop within the next 24 hours or so.
Well, just within a matter of hours. I mean, I remember a time when we never really talked about post-race inspection.
No. Yeah,
now everyone's waiting with bated breath to see who cheated, basically. So, I'm not saying anybody cheated, but it kind of seems like that's the theme is, let's see who manipulated their car under the watchful eye of NASCAR.
Right.
Mwah.
Yeah, right?
So, and of course we'll talk about that as we get further on into the segment, but definitely some interesting storylines. Definitely did not go the way that I saw it going, but it ended well for one Martin Truex Jr., who, man, what an underdog story.
Right.
That's like the Cinderella story that everybody likes. That's a storyline that nobody gets tired of hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Nobody ever gets tired of hearing about Martin Truex Jr. So.
Well, he's got some good power behind him, right? I mean, there's so much goodness dripping off of him and Sherry Pollux right now with their Martin Truex Foundation. I mean, he can't. The thing is, dude, he's riding the wave right now in 2016. That's for sure.
Well, and September is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. So if you remember several years back, ovarian cancer was largely kind of unheard of. It wasn't spoken of quite in the same sentences like breast cancer. Breast cancer has been something because of the Susan B. Komen Foundation. That was something that has been brought to the forefront of our minds to the tune of it becomes part of our everyday life now. You see the pink shirts and the wristbands and all that. Well, really, the Martin Truex Jr. Foundation, Martin Truex Jr. and Sherry Pollux have done such a phenomenal job of bringing this to the forefront for women. So, really a great, not to mention what they do for the kids. They do such fantastic work. And like I said, it's impossible, even if you're not a fan of his on the track, it's impossible not to be a fan of Martin Truex the human. Right.
Period.
So, I mean, and that's, when he gets on the track, it's a whole different thing. And I understand people have to pick their nation. But off the track, man, I mean, him and Sherry Pollux are breaking new ground, raising awareness, and I think they're going to save some lives. So,
good on
big
them.
Big props to all those folks. Aside from the NASCAR thing, huge props. So,
absolutely.
This weekend has actually been for some of our hometown heroes. Some have been misfortune, and some have been some really good stories. So I was going to break it down for our people. If
what
you don't
happened
mind,
out there? Go for it.
Well, this was Haley Moody's triumphant return to racing in the Cars Tour.
Man, Haley.
Big deal. You're talking about a 2014 Southern National Motorsports Park track champion. You're talking about a 2014 NASCAR Diverse Driver of the Year award recipient, fell on some hard times, passing of her father and whatnot, suffered an injury following that very big banner 2014, and has kind of suffered, she's been going back to school and been trying to put all the pieces back together. Well, she gets an opportunity with Lee McCall, Solid Rock Carriers, and Ask Logistics. They pull together this phenomenal race car to make her return. And basically racing in the car series. So really, she says, Haley claims that they probably had, all in all, a P5 car is what it kind of looked like, but they decided in the race at some point to fall back to save tires, which is always a strategy that we see people do. So this is something that you see in the big leagues as well. And basically battled her way back to the top, and she finished P11, which is it's very respectable for her first time in a race car in quite some time, about a little over a year, with a new team. So big props to Solid Rock Carriers, Ask Logistics, and Lee McCall on getting Haley back in and giving her a respectable 11th place. And obviously we all hope to see her in some more opportunities. So good deal. Next thing, Lexi Gay in the CM Development Gordo's Cheese Dip 77 Chevrolet SS at Greenville Pickens. Actually she was on the show for the big show. She was actually one of our big show guests. We all love Lexi Gay, right?
Yeah, awesome.
So she has she was very self-deprecating actually about qualifying. Qualifying is really kind of a new thing for her. So she's in a new car, a new track, new team. She's really trying to pull all these pieces back together. And she actually starts a very respectable third. So
there you go.
And then at some point in the race suffered a mechanical failure and hit a DNF. However, the bright side is she qualified P3. So that shows that the 77 team is starting to find something. It sounds like Lexi is getting her hands firmly around the idea of qualifying on these scuffed tires that they run on. And hey, good things
to you,
for
Lexi.
the 77. Yeah, good things to them. So
absolutely.
And then, of course, we know about our buddy, or at least some people might know about our buddy Obi, who actually suffered a somewhat catastrophic failure with the 29 car, damaged quite a few components, couldn't finish the race, and then Cliff and I were getting some pictures and all that over the past week. Obi's working full-time, taking care of mama and the baby, being the family man that he is. And
racing cars.
And he's working in the shop, tearing apart his own car, looking at all the components piece by piece with his own bare hands, using those fantastic zip tools that we're all big fans of.
Yep.
And actually, rebuilding his race car and ready to make another run at. I mean, hey, he didn't finish, did not ruin his Rookie of the Year because he clearly has in the NASCAR Whelen All-American Series clinched the Rookie of the Year. So mad props to the 29
right
team
on
that.
Obi, yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Big round of applause. There you go.
Big round of applause on
there
that.
You go.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And hey, man, let's hope. I'm hoping and praying that we see that car make a run at the championship next year, because if anybody can do it, it is the Aviator Brewing, Baby Moon Cafe, Nectar, Zip Air Tools, 29 Chevrolet SS of Brian Obashinsky.
Whoop. Go get it, Obi, man. We're behind you. Yeah.
I ain't like that. Boy, I ought to be a race car driver, except not the driver, just the person who drops all the names after, like during the interview.
You should.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What do they call that? That's a job for somebody, and we're going to give it to you.
We're not really sure what the job is, but it's yours. So if you want it, it's yours for the taking. So I just created another role for myself.
You know what? You're good at it, dude.
Well, at Right Sides Only Radio, everybody, if you're not fully aware, I'm actually the chief baby kisser.
Yeah.
So
silky smooth lips.
Silky smooth. I autograph all the babies' heads.
Yeah.
And I shake hands and kiss babies.
You know what? Honestly, Evan, like last week, so we did the big show. We were on here for 3 hours. I mean, it's awesome, dude. The thing is, we get a lot of feedback from our listeners who follow us and support what we're doing and that sort of thing. And, going back to the like I said last week with the 3-hour big show, we really appreciate everybody hanging out and, listening to the different segments and the guests we had on. There was so much there for us to cover. And I can't believe we covered 3 whole hours. I mean, that was awesome, and it was a lot of fun, and we appreciate your guys' feedback and support for sure. And then along with those, Zip Air Tools. So Zip Air Tools, Evan, we got to drop this in the beginning of the show, right? There's so many great partners, people who have rallied around us to help out what the Right Front Tire and what Right Sides Only Radio is all about and what we're trying to do. Zip Air Tools USA is one of those places. You can check them out on Twitter at Zip Air Tool USA. They were headed off to SEMA. We're trying to help them out with what they're doing at SEMA. They're going to have a booth there. They're looking for sponsors or partners to go in with them on SEMA and that sort of thing to give away prizes and bring more attention to what Zip Air Tools USA is doing. But we have a promo code. So here's the thing. I talked to Isaac this last week. The cool thing, I said, Isaac, what is it about Zip Air Tool that kind of sets you guys apart, right? I mean, talking about it and that sort of thing, I wanted to know what really makes a difference for you. And he gave me several scenarios, Evan, where he told me about breakdowns with a lot of the name brand stuff that's out there that they weren't able to complete the job depending on what it was, and Zip Air Tools was able to perform the job pretty much beyond expectation. So at Right Sides Only Radio, we're real happy to be able to support them. They gave us a promo code, so if you want to go check them out, you can check them out at zipair.com. in their promo code. If you find anything there that you think you need to get in your hands to do your hobby project, or you're a car guy and you need some extra pneumatic tools in the tool chest there to complete whatever it is you need to do, RSOR 16 for 25% off your order for the rest of 2016.
That's a huge deal. 25% off. So if you buy a $100 whatever from Zip Air Tools,
how much is that?
$75.
Oh.
And I did that math right in my head, like
that's
on the
amazing.
spot,
That's
with
amazing.
pressure, all the pressure mounting and everything. So no performance anxiety. I was on the scene with that mathematics.
Can I qualify your statement for our listeners why you're able to do that? Here, I got a little story for this. Hold on.
Okay.
So I text Evan. I'm leaving work. Hey, what are you doing? What'd you say? You're reading a calculus book?
Notes.
Notes.
It might have been
Calculus.
Calculus notes, yeah.
You read calculus notes.
I do. Yeah. So,
And it's not cat videos. It's calculus notes that you choose.
Yeah, I know. So this is what
That's
I do
awesome, brother.
This is what I do in my spare time. So that's why long division, although it's not even really related, that is so easy for me. It just kind of comes naturally.
Don't ask me. I'm so glad there's a calculator on smartphones, dude. It's not even funny.
So I've got like several. I've got steam tables. I got all kinds of neat stuff. So we can just geek out at the Homestead race. Which, by the way, people, if you're going to be at Homestead Miami, we're going to have a legendary tweet up because the whole gang is going to be there. Well, we know that Batman, me, Cliff. We know that we're all going to be there. Yeah. So make sure you show up.
I'm looking forward to it.
And we're kind of hoping.
Today is the kind of day that I'm hoping for in Homestead. How about you?
I'm hoping for no rain, some sunshine. I'm hoping for some light up the world beverages in hand is kind of what I'm hoping for. I hope we have some of those in the ice chest, or I'm hoping we maybe have some of those that we can bring for giveaways. Oh, yeah. That would be really phenomenal. Yep. Go check out Light Up the World Beverages while you're at it. Use code RSOR, which is it? 5150. Yep. We have so many promo codes now. We got promo codes galore. So Light Up the World Beverages, anything you could possibly think of. Corporate events, golf tournaments, birthday parties, anniversaries, weddings, you name it. I guarantee you Darren Hagen and the folks at Light Up the World Beverages can do that for you, so go check them out. Use RSOR 5150 for a rather handsome discount on all of your Light Up the World Beverages purchases. So there's that, too. But, I mean, we're going to be there. Bat's going to be there. It's going to be a large time. You never know what Cliff and I are planning on doing. There might be some surprises coming. So if you're going to be there, plan on a tweet up. Because you never know what we're going to give away. Dude. We might just be giving away free hugs.
Yeah.
It might just be as simple as that. You might just get free hugs, but
you're in charge of that.
So I'll be signing babies' heads, shaking hands,
and hugging people.
I'll be the guy wearing the the Right Sides Only Radio Nation T-shirt, and on the back it says "Free Hugs."
There you go. So, like Evan mentioned, check us out on Twitter if you guys are listening to the show at Right Sides Radio. We have a lot of, like Evan said, we've got some promo codes that a lot of our partners have given to us to extend out to our listeners. We're happy to share those with you guys. 15% off, 25% off. I got a couple pair of Nectar sunglasses like we talked about before.
I'm loving mine.
Yeah,
I like
mine.
And that's not just for promotional purpose. No. I genuinely just love my Nectar sunglasses.
But I lost my sunnies. I can't find my sunnies, dude. The blue ones. I got the blue
ones.
Yeah, I can't find them.
Oh,
they're around here. They're around here somewhere because I ordered a couple pair from Nectar Sunglasses. So
hey, man,
I got 10 laying
dial
around
back
here.
dial back in, and get your discount, man. Just get another pair on a discount, even. So
gonna have to. So
get a
Evan,
pair of sunnies on us.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the promo code for it. So later on in the bottom hour of this show, we're gonna have Todd Jones on the show, Evan.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little taboo, and this is actually this is something that has come up on several different occasions on social media and even in casual conversation. This is something Cliff and I have talked about, believe it or not, behind the scenes incessantly. Matter of fact, Todd Jones coming on the show, which we're really proud to have him on. He is actually a member of the normal everyday media outlets, and he's not exclusively a NASCAR writer. He is a sports writer, so he has a somewhat neutral, objective, outside looking in opinion as to the health of the sport, which I think is going to be interesting because we do so much kind of in a silo, right? I mean, we talk to NASCAR people, we associate with NASCAR people, we only talk NASCAR, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So sometimes you kind of build a bubble around yourself. And this actually sparked like an hour and a half conversation with Cliff and I the other night. Which this happens all the time. Basically, we do like a 2.5 or 3 hour show every week because we talk for hours building up to the show.
Ain't that cute?
Seriously, we do. We take every single subject you can think of, and we just dissect it until it's not even recognizable to the naked eye.
We just don't share it with you guys because we're not sure you'd listen to it.
We're not sure you'd ever talk to us again. Let's be honest with each other.
But let me throw out the invite here. 855-482-7223. We're live right now. So if you're listening to Right Sides Only Radio, we're live right now. You can dial in if you call 855-482-7223. You can join the conversation with Evan and I. We would love, actually, after today's chase race, the first one, dude, I would love to hear what people are thinking about after this first race.
Oh, man, I tell you what, Cliff. And I know the beginning of the race. Most of the race was somewhat predictable, right? What I started to notice as I'm watching the ticker, believe it or not, because I'm actually listening to, at this point, I'm kind of at that part in the season where I'm not listening to the regular broadcast. I'm actually listening to the scanners. So I'm swapping around. I'm listening to all the different drivers and kind of what they're saying, but I'm watching the ticker.
Right.
And I'm watching the ticker, and I'm watching some of these really big names all of a sudden seem to be struggling. So you're seeing, Kevin Harvick and several other drivers are actually in the back, struggling to get back on the lead lap. Tony Stewart, it seemed like 3 of the Stewart-Haas cars seemed to have a hard time. Danica, she stayed laps down. Kevin Harvick gets plagued once again with something beyond his control. He qualifies on the second row, very respectable qualifying position, especially at Chicagoland, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking the 4 is going to step up, and he's going to have a rocket ship. Well, come to find out, he had a rocket ship.
Times 3.
Right. Well, but then apparently NASCAR isn't happy with what they consider a pre-race body modification.
Right.
So he has to fix it, or actually Rodney and gang have to fix it, and then he gets shuffled all the way to the back.
Right.
And manages within 38 laps to climb and claw his way up to 8th position.
Yeah. Amazing.
That car looked like it was not going to be stopped. And I thought, you know what? He's going to have to make a statement now, right?
Well,
so he's not going to quit mashing the pedal.
All right, so we got to slow down for a second, because what we saw out of Kevin Harvick today in that number 4 car going into the chase, we've talked about this. Kevin Harvick was the chase leader going into the chase very much through a large portion of this season. Then,
right up until the adjustment, the points adjustment. Yeah, but I mean...
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, as far as Mr. Consistency... Kevin Harvick, because, even though he had basically he only had a couple of wins going into the chase, because of his top 10s and top 5s, shoved him all the way to the top until they dole out the points and everyone goes to 2,000, then they get bonus points for their wins and so on and so forth.
Right.
But yeah, going into the chase, it looked like he was a guy that you were going to have to worry about. And then it seems like all of a sudden he starts getting plagued with air gun issues, or what happened today, or and then he decides that they're going to do some maneuvering with their crew members, right? So they take some crew members from the 10 team, and and then it just seems like, again, it's like, how, I don't know, and he's such a cerebral driver to begin with. He spends so much of his time in his head,
right?
That he's got to be ready to, I guess, top his head's fixing to blow off. I don't know. So.
Jeez. I'm telling you, dude, my wife and I were sitting there watching the race today, and she's just like, are you serious, right? For getting caught a lap down, pitting, when the caution came out, and the fact was, dude, like I texted you earlier today, if things went well for Kevin Harvick, he needed a wreck. First of all, really, he did. He needed a wreck.
Not his car. Preferably not his car.
But that's what he needed. My wife goes, how's he going to make it back to the front? I go, well, he's really fast. I go, and he needs a wreck. So if he gets a wreck, chances are you can clear out about, 4 or 5, maybe out of the field in front of you, and maybe get a chance to eat away at some of that field. But I'm telling you, he was plagued. Going into the chase, certainly we knew we were on pins and needles with Kevin Harvick, when he called out his pit crew and saying, something's got to change, something's got to give. He brought, like you said, dude, the car was fast. What they're bringing is fast. Look at Jimmy Johnson. We talked about this before too, and this has kind of been the talk amongst some of the major media outlets over the last week. I heard a truck driver call into XM radio saying basically they think that Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson are just laying in the weeds and they're about ready to spring on everybody.
We've talked about it nonstop about there's something going on, and sure enough, today he had a very respectable car for the better part of the race.
Yeah, well, he got lucky too. Right, he got lucky because of that caution. He was moving up in the field and he was gaining positions, but because of that caution, he kind of that's what put him out front. He still had a lot of work ahead of him up to a certain point. So anyway,
sure, but it's the old adage of sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and then then he gets popped. He gets popped for speeding. Let me tell you something. This year has been rife with pit road penalties. I don't know that I have seen a season with quite so many, and I don't know if that's just attributed to cameras. We've seen tires get turned loose, and it just seems like the more they ramp up the pressure, the more of this you start to see. And, of course, it's just kind of like in life. What you focus on becomes more clear.
Sure.
So if you have any weakness at all, and I'm not discounting how fantastic the pit crews are, I'm just saying if you have one little imperfection, it seems like this environment just magnifies it.
Oh, yeah, dude. We don't have room for it at all. At all.
But hey, man, story of the day. As far as I'm concerned, a couple of things came close to happening. Number one, I don't think it was going to happen because he was sitting on old tires. But Ryan Blaney and his crew, the 21 crew, making the decision to stay out, which was a very smart move.
Yep.
Because it could have been the difference between maybe not necessarily winning a race, but a top 5 or a top 10 as compared to being shuffled as far back as he was.
Right. Out
Elliott.
Yeah, dude. Right?
Going into 5 laps left in that race was clearly out racing the 78 car. He, as far as I'm concerned, if that race would have stayed green, I think we'd have found Chase Elliott in victory lane. That's my opinion.
Sure.
Just based on the performance. It didn't seem like Martin had quite what it took on the tires that he had to close the gap on the 24 car. And then, just like we all expect, yellow flag. Right. 95 car loses a right front, basically just shreds the right front side of his vehicle, leaves a fender on the track. But oh wait, they're still at speed. So the 78 car actually manages to miss the fender, but apparently run into some debris. He ran into some kind of rubber or something that was still on the track because they hadn't thrown the yellow yet. And now, all of a sudden, now it resets the field, and now everybody starts talking turkey about who's getting tires and who ain't getting tires. Right. And sure enough, the leaders decide it's worth the rubber, right? So come on down, get 4 fresh ones. You kind of wonder if the rest of the field is going to follow the leader or do the exact opposite. Some did the exact opposite, but the people that really had a stake in this game all came down and got fresh tires.
Oh, yeah.
So
several times. But
Martin Truex Jr., he wins the battle off pit road. That puts him on the much preferred outer line compared to where Chase was at. So now Chase has to worry about what he's going to do. Is he going to dodge down to the apron? He's going to have to worry about the slower cars in front of him because now he's got cars in front of him that are on old tires.
Right. Well, here's what I found was interesting about the entire day, right? Brad Keselowski. I'm going to gush on Brad for a second. Give me the mic.
Go ahead.
Stand back.
I'm
going to gush on him for this reason, dude.
Excuse us, folks. We're not sure how big this is going to get.
Yeah. Stand back. So P3, P4, lingering around that spot all day long, dude, against Joe Gibbs Racing cars, right? Whether it's Truex, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, he battled them all. Yep. Right, and here's the interesting observation, and this is the only reason I'm really talking about this is, looking at him being able to hold his position roughly through the entire race. That to me looks like, again, Joey's still a little bit struggling, even though he finished P2 today, but he didn't really end up there until much later in the race. Brad, however, was still fighting really strong to maintain and hold his position there. So what that's showing me, at least from my perspective, is that 2 car is still very, very strong, and that Penske's still got a lot to give as we head into this chase through the remaining races that are ahead of us. I mean, to me, Kyle Busch started at pole today, right? Where did he end up?
He finished eighth place.
Exactly, right next to Brad, and Brad continued and finished in the top 5.
Brad finished 5th.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, he did. I mean, Brad really held his own, and we've talked incessantly about what the Penske team is going to do going into the chase, and like you said, no, Logano really didn't set the world on fire today, but what he did do was him and Todd Gordon continued to kind of pick away at the 2022 car. Todd Gordon is a very sharp guy on the box,
right?
And obviously Joey puts a lot of faith in that guy's hands. And if you were listening to the communication between the spotters and the drivers and the spotters and the crew chief, you will realize how much information now they are sharing with each other. They are paying attention to every single detail. They are paying attention to all of the drivers in the chase. All the drivers want to know who's taking what line, who's gaining what speed, whose lap times are doing what.
Right.
Because they want to know what they have to do. Do they need to change line? Do they need to find a different line? Where do they need to go to find speed? What's Harvick doing? That was one of the questions of the day. What in God's name is that guy doing to gain 30 spots, right?
Yeah. Oh, my God.
But Keselowski had a strong – and, oh, by the way, the 2 car was beautiful, by the way.
What'd you think of that scheme?
Oh, I thought it was very pretty. They broke it up a little bit. They just did something different. They took a scheme they've been running for a while, and they broke it up. Actually, one of my favorite cars, I hate to say this, is the Miller Genuine Draft car.
Yeah.
I think the black and yellow is just a fine-looking car. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, the Penske team, I mean, and like you said, what really matters is where you're at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the first 9,000 laps, or what it feels like sometimes, really ultimately doesn't matter. If you are gaining and you are building, what matters is where you show up the last lap. That's what really matters.
Right.
And I continue to be, just to grow more and more fond of Chase Elliott as the days go by, because his attitude today was very simple. You take a gamble. You take a gamble like everybody else did. The pit crew did a really good job, and basically it is what it is.
Yeah.
So you get beaten off a pit road by 1/10 of a second or whatever it is, basically by a fender.
Yep.
And you know what? And that's what, and that is just racing. So I mean, and Chase made a very good point. Don't ever think that you're going to go into the final 5 laps or so without a caution.
Exactly.
Something inevitably is going to happen. It's going to shake the field up. And hey, man, that's the way it is. That attitude. And you could tell he was frustrated. Jimmy Johnson was visibly shaken.
Oh, yeah, dude. Was that crazy or what?
I don't think he's convinced that he was speeding. It sounds to me like he just completely denounced, like, I replace your reality with my own. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly.
I am the 6-time champ, so I don't really care what your clock said.
I thought it was funny what he said, dude. He was like, what do you say? I'll put the slowest car in victory lane.
Yeah, he actually made the comment that he was intentionally dogging his pit road speeds because he didn't want a penalty, which I thought was kind of comical. I thought, since when has Jimmy not wanted to be? I can't imagine him not wanting to be competitive, even on pit road.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the guy's a 6-time champion, so maybe he was being a little bit snarky with that comment, but
right,
because he looked directly at the camera when he said it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, kind of like that.
I mean it.
I'm the 6-time champ, and my tech said I wasn't speeding, so y'all might want to go recalibrate your equipment.
Yeah,
so.
We'll see how that goes. Hey, so we're approaching the bottom of the hour, waiting for Todd Jones. We're going to bring him on. So I want to talk a little bit about why we're bringing Todd Jones onto the show today. So he wrote for the Columbus Dispatch. He writes a blog called The Front Row. And just like you said earlier in the show, he writes kind of about sports in general. As a matter of fact, I believe he's on his way back from covering a college football game or some game today. We'll find out later when he joins us on the show. But he wrote a blog spot called NASCAR Not Roaring into the Chase for the Cup. And he kind of highlighted the fact, and this is what Evan and I kind of clued in on this last week as we spoke about earlier in the show, which, how do we say this, Evan? It's a difficult conversation to have in the NASCAR circle. You know, we talk about, all right, I'm going to say it right now. Everybody go ahead, kill the app, shut down the streaming, stop listening. Get your
tomatoes in hand.
Yeah, get the tomatoes. The seats were a little empty today.
I thought Chicagoland looked better than average. I really did, and here's the deal. And so everybody knows, Cliff and I are not seat counters.
No,
we're not. We are not the guys that sit watching the race with a counter in our hand, clicking all the empty seats.
So why are we talking about it?
We don't make comments about it. We don't get snarky about it. We actually pay attention to the race. Right, and we actually text each other about, oh, my God, you see that? Basically, if you looked at our text messages, it was like a simulcast of what was happening in front of us.
Right.
I'm too tuned into the race and the technology and the scanners and all that other stuff to even pay attention to butts in the seat. However,
right,
there is a looming conversation about the overall health of the sport, not just butts in the seat, the overall attitude about NASCAR.
Right.
And that, I think, was intriguing enough to Cliff and I to say, let's give this a run. It was kind of like the discussion about Cup Series drivers and the Xfinity and the Truck Series, right?
Right.
Nobody seems to want to talk about it, or every time someone talks about it is always seemingly to the negative. And Cliff and I always kind of want to put a different spin on things.
Well,
look at things from a different angle.
We do, right? So when we break down stuff, I mean, certainly we can break down data and all this other sort of stuff. But part of this is the fact that being fans, right? So we're caught up in the melee of social media and perception and what's really happening out there and that sort of thing, right? So we understand that. We get it, right? But here's the deal. So, being passionate enough about this sport and, passionate enough to say we're going to set aside time to talk about the sport and produce this show and all that other sort of stuff. So what's important to Evan and I is the fact that, when Todd introduced this article this last week, it kind of caught my attention of NASCAR's not roaring into the chase for the Cup. And I don't know about you guys. So I live in Southern California. Well, I don't know about you guys. I know Evan doesn't live in Southern California. And I know a lot of our listeners don't either. LA Rams. First opening regular season game today with the LA Rams. They beat the Seattle Seahawks. Everything in Southern California right now is the Los Angeles Rams. As a matter of fact, as I was watching the race today, I saw a particular commercial that said, even though they were doing the side-by-side, this particular product or whatever is supported by the NFL. And I thought, that's kind of interesting, right? I know there's opportunity for cross-promotion. Evan and I do it all the time. Zip Air Tools, 3030 Coffee, Light Up the World Beverages, Nectar Sunglasses. We get it, right? We understand this. But the reason why I wanted Todd to come on to the show is to kind of talk about that. As a general sports writer covering a gamut of different stick and ball sports, motorsports, that sort of thing, we kind of want to dive in a little bit about what is going on in NASCAR? What's the perception out there? How does it relate to the other stick and ball sports that are going on out there? And here's my $1 million question, Evan. Why do people not know that NASCAR is in a 10-race chase or at least a 9-race chase to crown our champion right now? So with that, we're going to bring Todd on the line, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So, Todd, are you on the line with us? Welcome to Right Sides Only Radio.
I am. Thanks a lot for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. I know that you kind of had a busy travel schedule today, so you were covering a football game today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I work in Columbus, Ohio. I was covering the Ohio State-Oklahoma game on Saturday, and last Thursday I was in Cincinnati covering Cincinnati-Houston, so I've been all over the place the last few days.
Busy guy. So with that, you kind of probably heard the introduction to what we're talking about and why we invited you to Right Sides Only Radio tonight. We really appreciate, first of all, Evan and I really appreciate the time. I mean, traveling, like you said, you've been busy covering other sports and that sort of thing. But kind of give us the rundown behind your article this week on the Front Row from the Columbus Dispatch.
Well, the Front Row is a blog that I do twice a day, Monday through Friday, and it's just kind of a general look at sports. I've been covering sports for 30 years, and I've covered a little bit of everything as a columnist and a feature writer, and I've covered a lot of events. And I've written a lot of NASCAR stuff, especially about 10, 15 years ago. I wrote more NASCAR stuff. And so during the week, I kind of hit on what's going on today or what's going on this week, and it just kind of struck me that I wasn't hearing a whole lot from people about, hey, NASCAR's playoff starts Sunday. So I just kind of went back and looked at some of the things that I had written over the years about NASCAR and some of my own thoughts about the sport, and just kind of felt like it was getting a little bit overlooked in general. And again, I don't think that's a fresh narrative. People have been writing about the TV ratings and so forth for a few years now, including myself. But I just thought it was indicative of the fact that it just seems to be getting buried, and we're hit with so much in sports right now. I mean,
right.
24/7, and football is so dominant.
Yeah.
That I just feel like sometimes NASCAR, as great as it still is, sometimes just doesn't get as much attention as it used to. And I don't know what it is. And I have some thoughts about it, and I was curious about your own thoughts. But I just wonder sometimes if it's just kind of falling back into what might have been more of a normal range of popularity in the sports world after kind of a bubble, in around 2006 or so. So
right. Well,
I don't know. That's kind of what I ended up writing about the other day.
Yeah, and I thought it was great, and that's why I contacted you, because I thought that your article was a lot in the arena of thought-provoking, the way Evan and I, the reason we do Right Sides Only Radio, right? So we do this podcast every week. We do it live. And when I saw your article last week, which popped up on Yahoo, which, their cookies are working, so they show me a great, so they show great NASCAR. Yeah, exactly. So I came across that and then did a little digging on the interwebs and found a way to connect with you. So we appreciate the time that you're giving us this evening. But the thing is Evan and I then had a conversation later on that week to talk about kind of what you wrote, and we can't agree with you more. The question that I posed, Evan and I's conversations pretty much sound like this podcast at times. So I asked the question to Evan. I said, he's in Southeast Texas. I'm in Southern California. And I asked him, I said, what have you seen in your local market promoting the chase for the Sprint Cup Championship?
Nothing. Zero. Zip nada. That's kind of what spurred the conversation on it. And first, I want to further the sentiment of Cliff by saying I do certainly appreciate, with your busy schedule, taking a few minutes with us.
Oh no, it's fine. No worries.
We don't. I'm not a big fan of the news, and especially right now when you start. I mean, we're in a 24-hour news cycle. Obviously, Todd, you're probably more familiar with this than anybody is. So we're in this continuous death spiral of politics and all the craziness going on in the world and social unrest. So I have a tendency to kind of withdraw from news and mass media just because I get I almost get exhausted, I guess, from the constant input of information. But I'll be scanning through.
I hear you. I'm in the media, and I get exhausted.
I'll be scanning. Well, listening to your schedule just made me yawn. I can't imagine. That's. And oh, by the way, I'm sure I can't wait. I can't wait to get a hold of an editor. She's actually the editor for the Right Front Tire, which is another website that Cliff and I manage. I can't wait to get a hold of her because she's actually a huge, colossal Oklahoma fan. So I was giving her a kind-natured ribbing about the Ohio-Oklahoma game. Total sidebar. I don't hear anything. I'll be scanning through the news, right? And you might see a blurb, a blurb. And I mean, it is mentioned so much in passing that it's like, okay, the Houston Astros, the Houston Texans, Jeff Gordon wins another one, right? And it just is kind of an afterthought, and it seems like an obligatory, hey, because FS1 covers NASCAR, at least last year, FS1 covers NASCAR. So any Fox affiliate has to at least drop the name NASCAR once in a 3-hour news show. And it just kind of seems like after that, it falls off the map. I mean, there's no real promotion. You rarely ever see commercials. Toyota has actually done a pretty good job of trying to keep NASCAR to the forefront because they've incorporated NASCAR into one of their commercials. And why not?
Right.
They've got some of the best drivers on the planet right now driving Toyotas. So, but beyond that, or the Nationwide commercials. Everybody loves the Dale Jr. commercials, but NASCAR doesn't seem to be out there really pushing the sport.
So based off of that, Todd, so what are you seeing? I mean, you cover a wide range of sports that are out there, like you said earlier.
Right.
So what are you seeing where NASCAR's not quite hitting or striking the chord with the general public in this day and age?
What's the difference? Because NFL, Major League Baseball, they all just bombard people with information.
Well, I think for one thing, as far as pushing the sport, I do know. Like last year, NASCAR had a couple of the PR folks, nice guys, came in and met with my editor and I at our office, and we sat down for about an hour and talked about NASCAR because they had noticed that I had written a lot of profiles about drivers and issues and history years ago when I did more NASCAR writing, and so I did a couple things last year, but then it just seemed like. Our attention turns elsewhere. I do think there's several different factors that kind of come together. One is I think we're so obsessed with football in this country, and I know here in Columbus it's college football, but it's also the pros in the state of Ohio. And I just think football is such a beast that it's almost overwhelmed all sports. I mean, I'm thinking about baseball right now. The Cleveland Indians are winning their division, and I don't think anybody's really fired up about the Indians in Ohio other than the fans in Cleveland. And I think sometimes football has just kind of become this beast that's eaten everything. I also think, too, that the way we consume sports is a lot different.
Right.
Technology, before 2006, when it kind of hit its peak with ratings in NASCAR, your Sunday afternoon, you'd sit down and you watch a race, right?
Right.
Well, I don't think people's lives are as sedentary as that now. I mean, I think we're just bouncing around on all these mobile devices that we have, and we're constantly checking this and checking that, and on Twitter. I don't know if people have the patience to sit in front of the TV for 3 hours, even if it's a compelling race.
Right.
And so maybe that plays part of it.
Cliff and I have talked about that same thing ourselves, too.
Yeah, I mean, I know baseball is, they're worried about speeding up the game. The ironic thing is that it looks slower than a football game.
Right.
These things are taking 4 hours to play anymore with commercials.
Right.
But I think sometimes the way we consume sports, NASCAR is not the only sport to deal with the attendance problem. I wrote a big story last year about college football. Their attendance is down, even though the popularity of the sport seems to be higher than ever in college football. People aren't going to sporting events like they used to.
Right.
Whether it's the cost, which is a big factor for a lot of people. I know with race fans it is. The time, the way we live our lives. Here in Ohio State, it's a little different with the scale, but they have 100,000 people at a game, but they've only sold out one game this year.
Right.
And I think that's got to be a little troubling, to the people at Ohio State. Like, geez, this is what's more popular in Ohio than the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Right.
You can get tickets.
Yeah.
And I think NASCAR, again, sometimes when we focus just on NASCAR, we think that, it's only NASCAR. But I think in some ways it's indicative of a lot of sports that are dealing with the same types of issues. And I think the fact that technology has changed the world in the last 10, 12 years, with our phones, it kind of coincides with what we've seen in terms of the drop in attendance and the drop in the TV ratings, and that's just kind of some of my own theories.
Sure.
I'm talking to people in the TV industry and fans. I know I've got friends who are fans who don't go to the races anymore because they just don't have the time or money.
Yeah, and Evan and I had talked about this earlier this week. I mean, you hit on a lot of the key points that he and I talked about. I mean, we're not professionals. We're not media people. We're fans, right? So
right.
We're fans that took our passion and said, you know what? We want to turn this into expressing that passion with other like-minded fans. So that's why we're here. But exactly what you hit on, and Evan and I had a lengthy conversation about this last week, is, we get inundated with the the, there's not enough butts in the seat. There's not enough ticket sales. NASCAR's all over social media trying to, bring up more awareness about the sport and that sort of thing. And especially 3 years into this chase now, I mean, certainly NASCAR's got a full plate in front of them to attract new fans to this sport. It's so easy. To me, that line is so fine between a long-term NASCAR fan, which you talked about in your article on the front row, was the fact that a lot of the fan base had died. A lot of the fan base had died with Senior's death. And that was certainly a transitional period for the NASCAR fans from where they were and where we are now 10 years later or more. Right?
Well, I think college football is going through that a little bit in the same way. I mean, college football was always broken into certain regions. You had the South, you had the Big Ten country in the Midwest, and you had some Pac-12 folks. But it's more of a national sport now. But it's also because of that, you're seeing more neutral site games, games on every night of the week, overexposure, rising ticket prices. And I even made a reference earlier this month about maybe there's a little bit of parallel to, it's almost like a metaphor to kind of what NASCAR's dealing with. Is it getting too big where it grows beyond its core base?
Right.
And if you do that, then you turn off too much of your core base, then you're starting to lose the people you could always count on no matter what the times are like.
Right, but then I think that takes you into the side of how do you attract enough new fans to replace those that are exiting from the fan base? Well,
they're certainly trying everything, right? I mean, they've made so many changes. I mean, they went to the playoff system. They keep tinkering with that. So they're searching, but I also wonder sometimes if all the different things that you try, I think sometimes people get tired of all the changes sometimes.
Yeah.
People liked what they knew what they had in NASCAR.
So you think the level of having a level of expectation, you think, or that consistency of expectation allows them to hold on to the fans that they have, because the change is what people can't stomach.
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe there was an overreach. Maybe you started taking races away, the second race at certain tracks, or an old small track, and you go to these cities that have all the new fans, and there's a bit of an overreach where then the people maybe you attracted, maybe they're not as deep-rooted into the sport, and it's kind of a cursory thing where they're into it and they like it for a while, but then they kind of go off on other things that they're more interested in.
Right.
And there, you've lost them, but you've also lost the people who used to go to that second race.
Right.
At an old track back in the South. So you've kind of heard, you kind of reach too far sometimes. I wonder if that's an issue.
Well, and here's something I want to highlight too, Todd, is the fact that, you brought up the Cleveland Indians. I'll say it right here on our live show. I'm not a huge stick and ball fan of any sort. I can't do 3 hours in front of the TV to watch anything but motorsports. I don't know what it is. I just don't. I was born without that gene, right? So at the end of the day, when I look at this, like you said, the college football sports having kind of the same issue, or you're aware of the fact that the Cleveland Indians are, I don't know, heading into the playoffs or whatever you said it was. But here's the deal. With NASCAR, we're not necessarily comparing apples to oranges, because we're talking about college football. And this is what kind of leads me into what I said earlier about what Evan and I are talking about in our local markets. The only time I hear about NASCAR is when they're out here at Auto Club Speedway. I don't understand, with two major networks like Fox, like NBC, why they're not making agreements or partnerships with their local affiliates to at least cover the sport within, I don't know, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, to talk about today was the first race of the chase for the Sprint Cup in 2016, and here's your winner. I'm not going to hear that on my local news today. So to me, when we broke this down and started talking about this kind of offline, we recognize the fact that there needs to be more done. Your article, to me, highlighted a day gone by, right? We've talked about 2006, the excitement in the 90s. You could buy a Wheaties box with Jeff Gordon on the cover. We're not there anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, NASCAR, really is not penetrated the psyche of the general American public at this point. It's become
Yeah,
much more
yeah.
smaller in terms of where it's reaching. And like I said, I bang my head against the wall all the time trying to figure out what is it that we're missing. You know, and
well,
just
I
like
wonder this. Have you guys ever thought of this issue? I mean, maybe the season's too long. You know?
Yeah.
We
People
haven't
have said
talked
that
about
before.
It wears on the teams. It's so expensive, but not only that, but to maintain someone's interest. And I'm not talking about the NASCAR, the hardcore fans. I'm talking about the fans who have discretionary time or income, who might, jump on the bandwagon for a while, but if the season goes on as long as it does, and they just kind of don't keep up on the day-to-day, and then your playoff starts basically at the same time football's amping up, maybe that needs to be rethought. I wonder sometimes if baseball ought to be better off if they played the World Series in August, right before football got crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
for sure. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of different ways to look at it. So some of it's just kicking around ideas.
And you know what's funny about that is when we started watching the race today, my wife and I, we talked about that. I mean, the thing is, like you said, I've watched just about every Cup race through this season, right? I mean, The DVR's been busy. I mean, maybe I've gone back and had to rewatch 2. Otherwise, I've watched them live, which means for me, Sundays is a huge investment of my time into NASCAR, right? But I've got a vested interest in doing so. But at the same time, like you said, I mean, that competition for the attention that people have to contend with, right? So it's hard to take that casual fan and expect them week in and week out to be on the couch for 3 to 4 hours. Right, and especially when
maybe what NASCAR needs to do then is quit worrying about the casual fan and just worry about what is the hardcore fans who are with them every Sunday, who do live and die with every little minutia of news, who really love the sport as much more than anybody. Maybe they have to think about what can we do to better please them. And maybe the idea is like, let's not worry about how big can the sport get in general, but how much happiness people are getting from it who already are the hardcore fans. Does that make sense? It sounds like you're shrinking the product, but actually I think you're intensifying the passion of the people who are always going to support you.
Yeah.
It's almost like less is more. Maybe less is more. I don't know. I'm just throwing around an idea. But sometimes it's like when you start reaching, it's like a restaurant chain that it gets too big. You start reaching too far, and you're trying to get all these people to come, but then you lost sight of the people that you originally liked you to begin with. And then you got them griping and complaining and moaning and wondering, what should we do? And maybe you ought to just take a step back and say, let's go back to some of the things we used to do and do those things better. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of different thoughts about it.
We do too, and Cliff and I talked incessantly about all the different strategies, and I don't know. I don't necessarily know, and I'm sure Cliff would agree, and most people would agree, I don't necessarily know that NASCAR is doing anything wrong. I think their Drive for Diversity program and trying to incorporate younger people into the sport and trying to find some way to get kind of the millennials. That's going to be the next task, is what's going to happen when the people like Cliff and I, we're of course aging and our kids are getting older and something else, another factor that we talked about, and you actually have hit on basically, I'm glad to know that maybe Cliff and I aren't, we know we're crazy, but it's good to know that we're a little more aligned.
I'm crazy too.
We're a little more aligned with the media than we thought, because you hit on something that we talked about, and that was, it seems like kids are involved in so much stuff today. So you've got little Judy who's doing cheer and dance and softball and God knows what else, and Johnny's playing football, basketball, baseball. I mean, and parents spend 24/7 juggling kids with 2 full-time jobs trying to. So come Saturday and Sunday, there's not 15 minutes to spare amongst the family. Back when I was a kid, we played 1 or 2 sports. We didn't play year-round, and my parents used to take us to football and baseball games, and we did sit and watch races together. And that seems to be kind of the difference now, is the kind of quote-unquote nuclear family, if you will, has kind of exploded. I mean, there's just no time for it. There's no room for it. There's no money for it. So, I don't know.
The world changes. And like I said, the way we consume sports has changed. And maybe if you really think about it, maybe we're just talking about, is NASCAR as popular as it used to be by only using the measurements that we used to measure popularity, and that's attendance and TV ratings.
Right.
But you think about it, 15 years ago, there were no social media numbers for NASCAR.
Yeah.
But people are consuming NASCAR in different ways. They are getting millennials who check their phones and are in fantasy leagues, and maybe they don't sit down and watch TV for 3 hours and watch the race, but maybe they do. They read NASCAR stories on their phone and they check the social. They check all the different things that they can get into different ways. And again, they might not be the guys who go to the races at Michigan Speedway and spend their money, but it doesn't mean they don't like NASCAR. They just consume it differently. So sometimes I wonder if it's some of the issues and the problems that we see are just, those things are just changed in a different manner.
Yeah.
And
or
TV
maybe
ratings are down. The TV ratings are down in every sport. Attendance is down in every sport.
Right.
So it's not like NASCAR is wrong.
Right. And I think that's what highlights, that's the thing, is when we look at this, it's easy to be a NASCAR fan and you're kind of wrapped up in that bubble and you hear about attendance and ratings and all this other stuff. I think what the message that you're bringing is the fact that all professional sports are struggling with these same types of things. Right? I mean, it's not indicative.
Right.
It's not a plaguing problem that's resigned to NASCAR only. That because of social media and streaming content and things like just exactly what we're doing, the fact is that you can create content and put content out there. Obviously, the big guys have a much wider spread for that. But the ability for the millennials or whoever it is, the opportunities to ingest or consume all this content, whether it's a 3-hour race or I can only handle 30 minutes of it, at the end of the day, the fact is that there's so many sports that struggle with the same thing NASCAR is struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why, I think sometimes it's almost like maybe not just NASCAR, but all in whatever sport you happen to be really, really invested in. Maybe just say, you know what, I really like what I'm watching. There are good storylines going on in NASCAR. There are good things going on. And, some of the issues that we harp on, maybe that's just taken away from some of the enjoyment that we actually just need to allow ourselves to have a little more of.
Yeah.
I mean, if you love the racing and you love the new drivers, the different stories, I mean, you're still enjoying it, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not NASCAR has grown as much as it did in 2006, is it ever going to draw that many again? I don't know, but does it ultimately really matter if it's pleasing its core audience?
Yeah.
That's why I wonder if don't stretch too far from the home base. There's different sports have gone through different booms. There was a tennis boom at one time. There was a running boom. There's always these different ups and downs.
Sure, there is.
NASCAR maybe just doesn't need to. Maybe NASCAR just doesn't need to worry about whether or not it's the fourth biggest sport or whatever it might be.
Right.
And just try to be the best it can be in its own way. There's nothing wrong with that. We have hockey here in Columbus, and people say, "Well, is hockey the fourth major sport?" It seems like it's more of a niche sport. Well, whatever that argument is, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's popular among its hockey fans.
Right.
People like to go to the games, and they enjoy the sport. And once in a while we'll see the same type of article. What's wrong with hockey? Why don't we get more people watching hockey? Well, maybe there's a ceiling, and that's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, no, we don't know either. But I mean, the thing is, you've certainly helped us broach this topic a little bit. I mean, as you know, writing about the sport of NASCAR, there's certainly these contentious questions that kind of hang over everybody's head, and we all kind of scratch our head thinking about it, and that sort of thing. And that's why Evan and I certainly appreciated you joining us on Right Sides Only Radio, because this is one of those things that he and I have taken offline. We've discussed at length. There's no magic. There's no crystal ball to the answer. Like you said, either you can be content with the outcome kind of where we're at and keeping that core interested and engaged in the sport. There's certainly opportunities to attract new fans to the sport. And, as a whole, I don't think that NASCAR is doing a bad job of doing that right now, both of maintaining its fan base. Certainly there's people that will disagree with me. On the second side of it, I don't think they're doing a bad job of attracting new fans either. But like I said, I mean, your article was definitely thought-provoking, and because we wanted to kind of...
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, as fans...
Well, I think if anything, what's interesting is like, I can't say that I'm a NASCAR writer. I don't cover NASCAR on a day-to-day basis. There are obviously more journalists who know way more than I about NASCAR. But I've written about it, and I've written about all kinds of different sports.
Sure.
And I think maybe that type of perspective is a little different than when you get, when you're only seeing one thing myopically every day, day after day after day. That's kind of all you see. And the thing I'm trying to do with the blog that the newspaper allowed me to start is to try to just put a light on some different issues or topics or people in sports and bring in different perspectives because of the wide variety of things that I've done in my career. And that's kind of what I hope to do with that. It's not like, it certainly wasn't like I'm going to sit down and be negative about NASCAR. That's not the point at all. It was just more of, hey, doesn't seem like anybody's paying attention in general.
Right.
What's going on here? Because it's still a good sport. There's still good storylines. There's great drivers.
Yep.
What's going on? That was what I was trying to accomplish with it. I'm glad that you took notice. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, we certainly appreciate the insight. Like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, there's certainly the opportunity for us as fans and as media to kind of highlight the things that we see that are going on in the sport and that sort of stuff. But like I said, I mean, it was certainly thought-provoking, and for the rest of our listeners, if you want to follow Todd Jones, he's at Todd_Jones, and he writes a column or a blog for the Columbus Dispatch called The Front Row. So if you want to check out Todd's work and see what else he's got going on in the rest of the sports world, obviously we'll keep a watch on you, Todd, and see what else you got to say through the chase for the rest of the season.
Yeah, never hesitate to reach out if I can be of help in any way, shape, or form. Just contact me. I appreciate your time. And
thank
you.
Great
talking with you.
Thank you so much, Todd.
All right, guys.
You bet.
Take care. Take care.
Take care. Bye. So that certainly highlights a topic that Evan, you and I have broached or tipped dunked our toes in on several occasions, whether we've done it on Right Sides Only Radio or outside of that context of our show. But doing a 3-hour big show the way we did, we certainly, that's the thing. We can spend hours on that topic, and we're certainly not going to fix it here. Fix is probably the wrong word. There's nothing broke. It's the understanding, and like Todd said, there's so much competition for our time, and our attention, and the way that we consume this sport. He hit on a key aspect of this, and we won't spend too much time much longer because we're almost out of time, or we are out of time. The fact is, dude, I panic if I can't watch a race.
Oh, I do too. I start stressing out. I start actually kind of timing everything that I have to do throughout the course of a day around when the race is. But I think that's kind of what Todd was hitting on is, and maybe we discredit it. We probably don't do it intentionally. But I think what Todd hit on was very insightful. I thought the whole article was introspective. It would have been nice. I kept thinking about more and more stuff to ask him, and I hate the fact that we ran out of time. But the reality is, I think sometimes we unintentionally discredit the core base, the people that have been around for all these years, and they've stuck through the thick and the thin, and they're still there. And you see them at the races all the time. They're the people that still have the Dale Senior T-shirts and all that stuff. I mean, they're still very much core fans of the sport, and I don't think that we discredit it intentionally.
Right.
But I think all the talk about what can we do different, and all the talk about how can we address new fans, and how can we do this, and we're all the time trying to make the sport flashier and more attractive.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we probably do ourselves a disservice by not letting the sport stand on its own merit, right?
Yep, I would agree with that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Is there some stuff that we could all collectively do different? Sure. I would personally like to see more commercials. We see NFL commercials galore. We see baseball commercials galore. And they talk about football all season long. You hear about the NFL, right?
Yep.
Now, that being said, NASCAR having the talented group of PR and marketing people that they have, because the marketing they do very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to be able to talk to one of those folks and find out why exactly that is. Right. Maybe they have ran the numbers and said, I don't know that running an umpteen $1 million ad 2 or 3 days of the week is really going to do any good.
Yeah.
Is it going to put more butts in the seat like everyone apparently wants? I don't know. Is it going to get more people sitting in front of the TV for 3.5, 4 hours on a weekend? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
these are incredibly smart people. This is a $1 billion marketing empire we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think they know what they're doing ultimately.
Yeah.
So, I think maybe Cliff and I are just going to continue being fans and running our mouths on Sundays, and because I don't know what the answer is.
I don't either. And we talked about that. That's what's cool about this topic, right? I mean, we contend with this as fans. In your workplace, in your community, people go, hey, you're a NASCAR fan. Hey, what about that? Hey, I saw this big wreck, or I heard so and so's cheating. All that sort of stuff. And it's like, as fans, how do you get yourself position to be able to respond to that sort of thing, and do it in such a way that is going to attract people to the sport and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, like I said, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for NASCAR. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. Like I said, Todd Jones just kind of highlighted a simple fact. Like I said, we're running a championship here with 9 more races. We had the first one in the can today. There's a lot of excitement around this, and I just don't understand how it's not in the communal psyche of this great nation, Evan.
I don't know either, but you know what is in the communal psyche is we have another race coming up. It is the second in the first series of knockout-style bracket championship chase.
Yep.
And that's going to be in New Hampshire. We're going to Loudon, New Hampshire. So
that's it.
I think this is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see all the tension that is starting to brew.
Yeah.
You can see the water slowly starting to boil. There's going to be some tempered flaring. There's going to be some hurt feelings. But I'm going to go ahead and make my pick now, just because we typically do. It's all for fun. I wouldn't be picking your fantasy picks based off of what Cliff and I say. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick the 22 car.
Oh, Mr. Logano at New Hampshire.
Because, well, first of all, it's his, it basically is home track. Tonight, in the IndyCar Championship race, Penske's got 2 drivers. Both of his drivers are competing for the championship.
Oh, yeah.
That's how good it is to be Roger Penske right now.
Right. I'm going to go with Happy, dude. He's not happy at the moment, but I think Happy Harvick's got New Hampshire that he's going to wrap up here. So I'm going to take Harvick. I think I think that team's going to rebound like we can't believe.
I think that when he does, when they reignite, when they get the engines firing, I think you got a real problem on your hands. And his mind game plan, if anything, that little shot that he gave to the 78 car today, I think he's already starting to lay the groundwork for some psychological drama a little down the line too.
Like a bull in the stands. Like a bull in the stands.
He's like the mean kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's gonna. Never mind. I'll leave that alone. Hey, if you guys are listening, following at Right Sides Only Radio, head over to our Facebook page. Tonight was I guess you'd call it
for us.
Yeah, big first. We did live video streaming out to our Facebook page. Go search Facebook for Right Sides Only Radio. You should find this episode there, video. We're working out a couple things, but we should have our full show available for you guys there, and some other cool stuff we're going to be doing. Whew. Well, that was a quick hour after doing 3 hours, Evan. I was kind of wondering what an hour would feel like. So that's
an hour flies by. It's like nothing. It's like a blink of an eye.
Yeah. So we really appreciate you guys for joining us at Right Sides Only Radio. Follow us at Right Sides Radio, and we'll see you all next week after New Hampshire.
Thanks for following, guys.
Yeah.
See y'all
take
next
care.
week.
Have a good night.